Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am here with one of my favorite guests, Athletic Director Kasey Hicks. Kasey, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Paul. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So why we're having you here is we are at a very interesting time in Knights athletics part of the season. We just wrapped up the baseball season, and we are looking forward to the soccer season. So that's really one of the two big things we're going to talk about here today, and then also what the future holds for the basketball team and for the athletics department and program here moving forward. So, well, the first thing that we want to talk about is the Central Penn Knights baseball season. They wrapped with a 6-12 overall record, with a very, very respectable 3-3 record at home, but 3-7 on the road. Played a lot of games against the Rakeford Baseball Academy. Christendom, gosh, we played them 6 consecutive games, including 4 of the games that we got to call, and 8 total games on the season. So really, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic really played havoc with the schedule, as did weather. It was very cool early in the season, several rainouts. But so explain to me, first of all, what some of the challenges were coming into this season with scheduling, and then how you think that the season overall went.
Yeah, definitely. So coming back from the COVID pandemic was difficult with scheduling. We had some of our normal opponents, a lot of the Penn State branches, decided to play conference only. And with us not being in that conference, we lost a good handful of those games. Traveling was questionable too. We like to go to North Carolina. We like to have a couple overnights, and obviously with the pandemic, we weren't able to schedule those games as well. So definitely took a hit with scheduling. That's why you see a lot of the Christendom, who's also an independent school like us, the Rakeford Baseball Academy, several times on the schedule, because if anything, we just wanted to play baseball. So
well, and that's the thing. I mean, just for people kind of to peek behind the curtains a bit, you're making this schedule like in the fall, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the next season. And if you think back to where we were, I mean, we didn't even come back on campus till October.
Right.
So you're sitting there making a schedule probably from home, in September, having no literal clue what to expect when we get to that point. And so while we can probably say that in hindsight, maybe it could have been a bit easier to play some of these schools. I mean, some of these schools are right in our backyard, as opposed to them traveling all across the state. That was certainly their purview. I must say, personally, I'm proud that we even got 18 games. After nearly a year of no baseball, and based on how things kind of were looking in November and December, like I remember having conversations with you just after the new year. You're like, hey, this is what we have, but who knows what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
So in the end, I mean, to play 18 games and really should have played 22, there were 2 different postponements that just couldn't make it work to make it up. And here's another challenge that I'd love to hear you speak about a bit. So major leagues start in April. I mean, you might get a couple games in March. We're starting like March 1. Our first game here this season was supposed to be March 1.
Right.
Actually, February 29th,
28th, something
29th.
like that.
But so that's sort of the other issue here, is that because of the college baseball season, and for those of you, the reason that the schedule in college is so different is because, number one, baseball is a very big summer ball, travel ball type of thing, but it goes on sort of your spring and fall college, which of course we're accelerated, so we're not, schedule. And they're done by the beginning, middle of May.
Right.
So our schedule is basically March and April and maybe a couple of games in May.
Yeah, even postseason we're done by mid-May, end of May. So
really you've got 10 weeks to play games.
Yeah.
And so that also kind of, and again, we've been lucky the last 2 years that we haven't got a ton of snow, because if you get a bunch of snow in late February, even into March, sure, in the net where they have a turf field, the infield's fine, but if you got mounds of snow in the outfield, you can't very likely play, right?
Right, for sure. I mean, it would make for a fun game to watch, but
I suppose
not ideal for the team.
No, not at all. So that all being said, it was very, very chilly, even opening day. Gosh, I remember sitting in the booth with you, and I'm sitting there freezing. But we did have ultimately some real nice games, a couple of windy, but and so I must say, I was just so happy
It felt good to see them back
It
on the
was
field.
just, especially after sort of the roller coaster of last season, and when we talked about, the documentary and all the things that we covered there, and we were holding out hope for some of the guys to come back, and it just didn't work out. But just to have those 18 games back this season, it's I'll never forget it. And I know that I'm sure Coach Stern would have some discussions about what he thought and how he thought things went. But overall, when you look at the schedule, especially later in the season, it was really not the pitching, which had been the issue in years previous. It's really was the offense, which we really didn't think was going to be that big of an issue. So I'm interested we'll have him back on sometime soon and talk to him a bit more about that. But a lot of really, really close games down the stretch. I mean, Mid-Atlantic Christian 5-2, Scotland Prep lost 6-5, and even at Northampton Community College, who's a juggernaut, 5-2 and 4-2. So what were your, in the end, what were your impressions of the baseball season? Maybe some positives and maybe some things that hopefully go a little differently next year.
I was happy with the guys. Like you said, the games were all close. We came out and we were able to compete. That's the biggest thing. I think having conversations with a lot of the student athletes, they're struggling to get back to a normal routine coming off of the pandemic. They had to go home, learn how to take classes online, stay successful in the classroom. Now we're rushing them back, like you were saying, up until right at the start of our winter term, I was still, Tetris with the schedule, had no idea what it was going to look like. So we asked the baseball guys to come back quickly, jump in, and give it all they got, and that's what they did. I mean, 6-12 it was the overall record, but I don't feel as though it reflects how well, how good of a team, how talented of a team we have.
Well, and on the bright side, and this is something that we certainly talked about on the broadcast, is that while, of course, we are so sad to lose veteran senior Chris Rosario, who I did not realize the all-time home run leader in hits, home runs, and RBIs.
That's correct. Yeah, actually, I have his final stats because I was impressed with him. So, final conclusion at the season, he finished with 14 home runs, 72 RBIs, 79 hits. So, I mean, he's all-time at the college for our baseball program.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Chris, and I know he's getting ready to graduate, too.
He is, yeah, and we had a good senior night for him.
That was
able
awesome.
to recognize him.
What you put together was so cool, and we were able to be there, and we were, he had his own camera crew.
He did,
but
yeah.
we certainly had our group there as well, and it was so funny because I was driving down there that day, and it just hit me when I was on the way. I was like, because again, I only got to do 6 games this year, and actually one of them I had to go to class, so I even missed one of the games, and it sunk into me. I was about halfway there. I was like, today's the last day, and it was a beautiful day. Again, it was a little windy, but it was a beautiful day. Really enjoyed it, and I was like, I had a lot of stress in my mind, and I was like, you know what? All that stress is just going to melt away because I get to go out and I get to call baseball.
Right, enjoy the moment.
And that's the thing, Kasey, I have a lot of responsibilities here. A lot of them, and I will certainly admit I put on myself. A lot of the things I do, I don't necessarily need to do, I want to do. And it's funny because, I've talked to people before just about my stress level, and people were like, well, why don't you cut some things out? Why don't you cut back on some of the things that you're doing?
Right.
And I say, because the only things that I really can cut out are the things that I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The big things that I could cut out if I wanted to would be this.
Right.
And this is,
Something.
and you see the look on my face when I come to the games.
I do.
This is, if I look back, and obviously I love what I do, I'm able to have a great impact on people and help shape their lives in one way or the other. But this is what I want to do. This is what I love to do. Being involved in sports, working in sports, and even in some small way that I'm able to do it here at the college. It really makes my job all the much more great in the long run, and especially baseball. I love basketball, and I will continue to be there at every possible game I can, call those games. But baseball, I mean, I'm such a fan, and
you grew up with baseball, right?
Yeah. I've played since I was 6 years old, and I'm still a coach, and love the game. And it's just so nice to get to work, and I got to have Brian back this year, even though he graduated. So those were actually 2 of the only times I've seen him since he's graduated.
Yeah,
was
so you
when he
get
was
to
at
connect
the game.
with some of the alum. Yeah.
So that being said, it's so hard for me, and I won't give those things up. I'd rather put the extra stress on myself. So.
Well, Paul, I know I say it a lot, but genuinely, I hear student athletes talk about how much they love the live stream. They're always asking for the links to send out to their family. You do an awesome job broadcasting it, as well as bringing back some of our students, alumni, current students, and etc. So we really appreciate what you do. I know it puts on a lot of extra hours for you, but I'm happy you enjoy doing it because we definitely appreciate it.
Wouldn't have it any other way. Interestingly enough, we actually, we're not at liberty to release this news yet, but all we can say is, at least hopefully coming into the basketball season, but certainly for next baseball season, lots of possible improvements for the live stream. I know that we have a big meeting coming up in the very near future about that. So stay tuned. We'll be sure to have you back before the basketball season starts, and we can update everything that we have going on the live streams. Well, some other big news for the Central Penn Knights is what's going on with soccer. So unfortunately, soccer was and basketball too. I don't want to downplay that, but soccer unfortunately lost their entire season last year. There was really no ability to play whatsoever because, again, they have a September, October type of, and while we were back in October, basically none of the teams that we were playing were back on campus at that point. And really, we were not there yet. The vaccine hadn't been out. People were massive spike coming into the fall. So how is the men's and women's soccer teams going to look this year?
Yeah, so that's been one of the struggles as far as it feels like we're having to rebuild our roster. We lost quite an amount of students to graduation, or maybe some of them are still at home online. So coming up here in the summer and fall terms, we'll definitely look to see that spike of students back on campus a little bit more alive, and fill out those rosters. Games and schedules, everything's looking good. For me, things are starting to feel a little bit more normal as far as scheduling and behind the desk type stuff. So that has been the best part of jumping back from the vaccine, trying to get back into a normal flow for things. So
let me ask you, even though that it does seem that we are making some significant progress, we're obviously not out of the woods yet. What are some of the protocols that you're going through in terms of planning games and things like that with the pandemic still, I don't want to say behind us, but still here with us hanging on? Yeah,
so the biggest thing, reaching out to other athletic directors and scheduling. Moving forward right now, schedules are open back up. So universities, colleges are not looking to play conference only, which helps us with scheduling. But the conversations behind the scenes are basically, what are your protocols for traveling? Are you guys testing your athletes before you're leaving? Are you doing temperature scanning? Things like that. So that stuff is still all spoken about. When we do game contracts, we have to go through what our protocol is. So here at Central Penn, prior to leaving, we do temperature scan all of our student athletes and coaches before they go. At our home games, we have our athletic trainers temperature scan visiting teams and our home team, any game day staff, things like that. So those are the things most of the people want to know is, are we still taking that precaution to make sure we're trying to keep our student athletes safe? Because at the end of the day, that's our job. Their parents are expecting us to make sure we're doing the best to keep them safe through these schedules. And we got through a baseball season with no issues. I'm hoping we continue forward with soccer. But yeah, temperature scanning has allowed us to open up the schedules for soccer. We have a good 12, 13 games already scheduled for both men's and women's soccer. Looking to add maybe 2 or 3 more for this season. But yeah, things are looking good. We're still gonna continue to make sure we're monitoring our students the best we can moving forward. And the good old masks are still there when we're traveling on the van. Our students do have to have the masks on.
Good old mask. Who'd have thought 2 years ago we would have been, that phrase would have entered into our discussion?
There it is, yeah. Hey, at least they have the nice Central Penn Knight logo on the front, so we're looking good in them at least.
So the one question I did have is, well, obviously because there has been some turnover here with the teams, obviously we have Coach Ubaldo coming back for the ladies teams, but we do have a new men's soccer coach. Let's hear a little bit more about him.
We do. So we just hired a new head men's soccer coach, Coach Brian Osborne. He's a local guy, Mechanicsburg, grew up in the area, went to Trinity High School, was a standout soccer track and field player at Trinity High School. He's coming to us from Cedar Cliff High School, so he's been a long time head men's soccer coach at Cedar Cliff High School. He played Division I soccer at Temple. University, and then I believe he ended up transferring, playing at Misericordia as well. So he has 4 years of collegiate soccer playing experience under his belt. He's young. He brings a lot of energy. Him and I had some really good conversations, just through the interviewing process, having him here on campus. And yeah, I'm excited where he's going to take the team. I think the guys are really going to respond well to him. He's coming in with big expectations, really looking to get the men's soccer program, up and running where we can be. And he's ready to go. I'm excited about what he can do.
How do you now? Obviously, I understand it may or may not necessarily be 100% your decision on coaches that come in. I know that you are a massive, major part of that. Mm-hmm. How do you, and feel free to use this one in particular, how do you determine whether someone is the right candidate for a position to coach here at Central Penn?
I think that's one of the hardest things that I struggle with, which is why it's good to work in a team when it comes to hiring. We have teams at Central Penn that are so across the board. We have super successful teams that are really competitive, and then we have some of our other teams where it's composed of a roster that want to play for fun. So it's hard to know what kind of coach do I need to get in here to get these programs where we want to be. But the ultimate goal is, men's and women's basketball, baseball, they're all national tournament contenders. We're looking to get them to that USCA national tournament. And when I was stepping into, this position of looking for this men's soccer coach, I said, that's what we want. We want somebody in here who's wants to pull together a large roster, bring in recruits, and get us on that national level. So, yeah, the biggest thing, honestly, Paul, when I'm talking to these potential coaches is to make sure they understand Central Penn, who we are, our demographic of student, and make sure that it's something that they're going to be able to stay motivated through. I mean, we have... Thanks to you, we have the live stream and some of the nice bells and whistles that some other colleges don't. But there's also things that we lack as an athletic department. Our coaches are part-time, but they're also our bus driver. They also are, our chef. They feed our student athletes when they're going to and from games. So they have a lot of responsibilities, and it takes somebody who is able to not only motivate a broad, diverse population of students within the roster, but can keep themselves motivated as well. So I think the biggest thing is painting that picture of who we are as Central Penn, making sure they want to be a part of that family and that they have that desire to kind of grind and work hard. And that's exactly what Brian showed us. And he said, you don't have to give me anything. I'm going to come here and I'm going to make this happen at Central Penn. So when he said that, I knew. I was like, hey, that might be the one, because that's the type of mentality that we need here. We need coaches who are going to go above and beyond.
So the final question before we get you out of here today is going to be about basketball. And again, we'll make sure to have you back on before the basketball season, because I know that's near and dear to your heart.
That's my sport.
As the former coach, head coach. So we've so much has happened on basketball. So we've got a new women's coach. Mm-hmm. Again, no season last year. So where are we at with our men's and women's teams at this point? I mean, we're still sort of even potentially up in the air on a venue. Let's hear where you're at with basketball at this point.
Yeah, so I know I said I'm getting back to normal, but some things are still day to day, and basketball is definitely one of those things.
Well, fortunately, you have a few months. You don't start till October, right?
Till October, yeah. So my sights right now are mostly on soccer. Side note, too, we are looking to do a couple of women's volleyball games. So we're trying to start back up women's volleyball this summer term. So we'll do a half a season with another new coach that we have here, Bob Smith, and we'll try and get together, 6 or 7 volleyball games for some of the girls, and we have a lot of interest in that. So that's exciting too.
Yeah, you were right next to me at the Back to Class Blast, and I saw that there were like 10 people who signed up for volleyball.
Yeah, volleyball's thriving right now. So, volleyball's looking good. Now we need those soccer numbers to get back up. But yeah, basketball, biggest concern right now is just venues. Obviously, anybody would understand we use off-campus venues, and with the pandemic, a lot of them are closed to, outside groups and, trying to keep their own.
Do you think that changes coming into the summer and into next year?
I'm hoping so. Yeah, I'm thinking this summer the venue will be open and back up, and hopefully we'll be good to get back in there for practices. I do have a plan B. We have a new partnership With the Nativity School Harrisburg,
Okay.
they're allowing us to use their gym as well, which is a really promising thing for our student athletes. It's an underprivileged school for all boys school in Harrisburg, and we're using their facilities, but they also want to use our student athletes as mentors and role models for some of these young boys. It's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade boys. So they have a summer camp coming up this summer where I'm going to take over some of our baseball guys, some of our basketball guys to play some wiffle ball with them, read some books, talk about academics, and really just embrace that mentorship responsibility that we have as collegiate athletes. So I think that's really promising. I'm excited for that. But besides that, basketball, I mean, we're going to do some open gym, some workouts here once we get into the summer term, and hopefully that venue opens back up. Scheduling is going good. So everything's working. We just got to get back into the gym.
I promise I'll have you back on and we'll talk. I'll give you a little bit more time. That's the one final thing is I wonder, and maybe this year it's not possible, maybe next year, I would love to help you set something up with some of the organizations that I work with in terms of getting like a summer baseball camp, whether it's just a different source of revenue or whether it's just something just to give back to the community. I think that would be something that now that hopefully the pandemic's sort of in the rear view, maybe that's something that we could talk about. So I'd love to chat with you about that.
I would love to do that. Yeah, cool. I want to get our student athletes out there in the community more, have them helping, because really, I mean, our student athletes have a lot on their plate and they work really hard, but even before when they shine on the field or on the court, when I see them at their best, it's when they're in those leadership roles and, kids or youth or their peers are looking up to them. That's when I see the most growth in them. So to get some more things like that, rack our brains together, try and come up with something like that, that would be awesome.
Cool. Well, hey, Kasey, thank you so much for joining us today on the Nightly News Podcast. I always appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Love to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Nightly News Podcast. For Athletic Director Kasey Hicks, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Norman Geary, news correspondent. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast, the voice of the Knights.
This is Nightly News Correspondent Jamie Harmon with another episode of the Nightly News Brief. The news podcast features audio versions of stories from our student reporters, articles by Molly Peters, Crystal Golden, Leslie Heimbaugh, Ashley Riekert, Madison Lucy are featured on today's episode. During the last week of April, Central Penn observed Sexual Assault Awareness Week on campus with interactive events and presentations for students, faculty, and staff. Activities prepared with sexual assault learning included a self-defense class on Tuesday, denim day on Wednesday, and a French fry bar on Thursday. Also on Thursday, a screening of the documentary The Hunting Ground, which details widespread underreported sexual assault on college campuses and the school's frequent reluctance to address the issue, was presented in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. Prior to the movie, Central Penn College student Kayla Murrin shared her story and experiences with sexual assault. Marin told the Nightly News, quote, "You can learn about sexual assault and you can read different things and try to prevent it as much as you can. But hearing it from an actual person that lived through it and experienced it helps you fully understand. It's hard to imagine unless you hear it right from the end," end quote. Through the week, students learned the warning signs of sexual assault. They learned, for instance, that sexual assault comes in many different forms. Sometimes experts said people don't realize they are victims of sexual assault. The meaning of consent was a major focus through the week. Many students said they wished there were more than just a week talking about sexual assault. Most people interviewed said the school's awareness-raising efforts were spot on, but students must want to learn and be educated about sexual assault. It's no secret diversity exists at Central Penn College. A student who asked to remain anonymous said, quote, "I feel less afraid here than I did at my high school. I think there is more than they can do for us, but I'm happy with how I'm treated now," end quote. And that's the goal of the commission President Linda Fedrizzi Williams formed last year, and members of the school's long-lasting diversity committee to show where Central Penn's diversity lies in all its layers. Director of First-Year Experience Janet Bixler said, quote, "Diversity is a variety. Diversity is differences that are acknowledged and appreciated. Diversity is nuances and subtleties. Diversity is the uniqueness that makes each one of us special," end quote. Bixler is one of the leaders of the Layers of Diversity Project, a collaboration of the President's Commission on Diversity and Inclusion, the Central Penn Institution Diversity and Equity Committee, and the Nightly News Media Club. The project is designed to show the levels of diversity on campus and at the Lancaster Center, and in doing so, help people deepen diverse connections and widen inclusion at Central Penn and the surrounding community. Through 2021, nightly news reporters will produce stories to highlight campus staff and faculty revealing their layers of diversity. Even so, members of the President's Commission and Diversity and Inclusion Committee see the opportunity to shed light on the campus diversity and promote inclusion with graduations and new admissions. The campus population changes, and its continuous awareness of diversity is important. Dean of Student Engagement Adrian Thoman said, quote, "This is something that I think we should always strive to do better with. We can't just be good enough. It's important to continue to educate ourselves, to grow and to find ways to improve the college for all of its students," end quote. Professor and nightly news advisor Paul Miller recently presented the 1992 film A League of Their Own for the spring installment of the Central Penn College Film Series. Over 60 people gathered in the CPC Outdoor Student Fellowship area on Friday, May 14th to celebrate their warm weather and their love for baseball. Several players from the CPC baseball team were on hand to autograph baseballs and movie posters and play catch with Camp Hill's Challenger baseball team, a Little League team for special needs children. The event also served as a fundraising for the Nightly News Media Club, which prepared a feast of grilled hot dogs and hamburgers, popcorn, and other movie snacks for the crowd. Before screening the film, Miller gave a presentation centered on his lifelong love of baseball, sharing stories of his experience in Little League, his adoration for the Chicago Cubs, and his experience coaching in the Challenger Baseball League. Also discussed the inspiration for the film, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, which was based in the Midwest United States, was active from 12 seasons between 1943 and 1954. After the most successful film series ever to date, Nightly News President Leslie Heimball will present during the summer term. Stay tuned for announcement in the near future. Now, well past a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, many students wonder what the COVID-19 vaccine will mean for them. Will Central Penn College mandate the vaccine for students and employees? No. According to Krista Wolf, Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost, Wolf said, quote, "Since a vaccine of any type is considered an invasive procedure, the college cannot mandate people to get this. However, we are highly suggesting that people get vaccinated," end quote. While the school may not have a policy on the COVID-19 vaccine, it does have a general vaccine policy for internships and student housing. Depending on the internship site, the students who are completing their internships may be required to have certain vaccinations. Wolf said, quote, "Some of our internships, especially in the School of Health Sciences, require students to be vaccinated for things like hepatitis, meningitis, measles, and chickenpox," end quote. Students living in the campus housing and prospective students looking to reside on campus are also required to complete a health form that includes a vaccination record for childhood vaccines. Despite not having a policy around the COVID-19 vaccines, Central Penn continues to ensure the safety of students and employees through detailed COVID-19 emergency planning and daily surveys of people on campus through an app-based screening forms and QR codes people scan when they enter rooms in the campus buildings. This information is used to help trace potential exposure to the virus. Students can access the survey through the Central Penn College app. Central Penn officials will continue to look at local, state, and federal health authorities for guidance on vaccination requirements in the future. The one-size-fits-all learning possibilities mentality does not apply to Central Penn College. Recently, Central Penn became Homeschool Friendly certified by the Baltimore-based Homeschooling Parent Association. CPC is the third Pennsylvania school certified by HSPA. Central Penn President Linda Fedrizzi Williams said, quote, "We are extremely proud to earn this certification from HSPA. Central Penn College is committed to building a strong relationships with local and regional school districts, cyber and charter schools, and parent organizations such as HSPA," end quote. 18 high school students started at Central Penn Colleges during the winter term, all of them from the Commonwealth Charter Academy. According to the HSPA's website, the organization's bedrock principle is that homeschool parents have a certain expectation from colleges, and one of those expectations is that the college be a homeschool friendly. Many parents discover, though, that many colleges are not homeschool friendly, and as a result, few colleges meet the HSPA friendly standards. Parents expect that different aspects of their children's intelligence be considered at the homeschool children will be recognized for accomplishments in their mastering those skills and that their family deem important. The certification takes as long as the designated college or university faculty member taking the exam requires to study for the exam and pass it. Upon the faculty member passing the test and the institution seeking certification paying the $499 membership fee, the college is certified. Central Penn College's communication coordinator, Greg Colburn, said, quote, March has been really good in terms of recognition for the college. In addition to earning the homeschool-friendly certification by the HSPA, we're designated a guard-friendly school from the Pennsylvania National Guard Association for the second consecutive year. Both of these awards are validated that the student-first, student-friendly approach taken by the college, especially by our admissions department, when reaching out to diverse populations of prospective students, end quote. Appreciating these different facets of learning and life experiences makes Central Penn stand a head above schools where administrators are not as open-minded. The approach increases acceptance and people's differences and the practice of diversity and inclusion.